We're right down here by our blue container, and the reason we're here is because today I want to talk to you about the benefits of planning ahead for these small spaces. And right there is an example of one of the benefits. This is our third crop in this blue container this season. This is the third harvest from this small blue container. We're talking about somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 6 square feet of space that's already provided us with a large container of radishes, a great harvest of potatoes, and now these carrots are going to come out of the ground and we're going to have another great harvest. So one of the benefits of a space like this is that if you plan effectively, you could end up with not just using this space one time, but up to as many as 3 or 4 times depending on what you plant in here. And the harvests? Well, the harvests have been great. So what are some of the considerations that we have to take into account when we think about our overall season length? And by season length, I mean the spring, the summer, and the fall. Our first planting in here was early spring. Well, one of the things we have to take into account is exactly how many days from our last frost to our first frost, and divide that out by the plants that we want to put in the ground. And we know that this is not a constant or consistent measure where we're 100% certain of having those exact days in place. So there's also that barrier that has to be there to make sure that what we're looking at is going to have room on either side for the potential changes in weather. This year, for example, the beginning of our season was interrupted by a late frost. And so while we had some vegetables in the ground, we had to come out abruptly and cover up as much as we could because there was unexpected cold weather. And that's something that you certainly have to take into consideration as you're deciding what is best to plant. So an early radish crop, which is going to be better able to handle that cold, is going to be more effective and a better plant to put in the ground. For our potatoes, the varieties that we planted, just like most potatoes, take somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 3.5 months. We were able to harvest from one of our containers after only 90 days, and the yield was fantastic. And you can see from some of this footage from that harvest that what we were able to get out of the ground that day created a great first step, first peek into what we were going to get in terms of yield throughout our whole potato crop. And that wasn't disappointing. When we then made the decision to plant our carrots in here, we had to take into account the fact that we were going to have a limited number of days left before it was time to harvest, before the soil actually froze. But we also knew that carrots can withstand some of that cool weather as well, some of that cold weather really. And so until the soil freezes, we have a longer growing season. So it makes sense to plant them later. All told, from this single container, we're going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of about 15 to 20 pounds of produce. 15 to 20 pounds of produce out of about 5 square feet is definitely an acceptable return on space investment. Just look at the harvest that we got out of this area and one adjacent bin. This depth, which is about 12 inches, was perfect for the variety of potatoes that we put in here. We were able to harvest those a couple of months ago just in time to put in these carrots, which will be ready right now as we head toward the end of fall and into the winter. So we're actually going to get, and again, if you look at the size of these, I can pull another one here. We're going to get some good sized carrots out of here. The greens are perfect to go into our worms, our vermiculture setup, and these are perfect to go into our stomachs. This plastic container, which is white but wrapped in black plastic, is exactly what we're talking about. This is a drum that's the same size as our blue containers, but cut in the opposite direction. And similar to those blue containers, this small area has now been used for 3 separate crops. The first crop that we planted in here and harvested was carrots. And you can see by the looks of these that they enjoyed the soil and the container in which they were planted. Now, because carrots take longer than, say, radishes, the second crop that we were able to plant in here was planted a little bit later. And so we had less time remaining in the season. And the second crop that we planted, those were our fingerling potatoes. And the size of those fingerling potatoes was absolutely much more, and the quantity much greater than we expected. Because those two put us near the end of the season, what we have in here now is hidden. This has become the area where we've planted garlic for the first time. So this garlic is going to overwinter in this bed, and then will begin to produce by the end of next season. So this is just another decision that we've been able to make to maximize the growing potential of another small space. If you have a space like this, a small, limited space, and you can plan out the sequence of what you're going to plant, the end result is you get much more than one space might appear from the beginning. Now you can probably see behind me a little bit of plastic, a little bit of netting out here where we've been covering up our crops because we have had some really cool nights in the 25, 26 degree Fahrenheit range. And that means if we give a little bit of cover, we can extend the lives of some of our gardens. But carrots are a cool weather crop. They like the cool weather, and so until the soil freezes, we still have the ability to leave them out here a little bit longer. Now this is a raised bed container, which should mean that the soil freezes a little bit quicker, and we know we have some snow coming up, and these are a good size. We're going to take advantage of that and go ahead and get these out of the ground and harvest them. Here's what we want to encourage you to do. Regardless of the amount of space you have, regardless of what the container looks like, as long as this food's safe, take advantage of the shape, the depth, whatever it is that you have access to, and make a plan. If you have enough depth for carrots, for potatoes, look at what you can do sequentially so that you can take advantage of an entire season. And again, that season isn't just limited to the warmth of summer. You've got the beginning spring and the beautiful fall weather and the variety of crops that enjoy each of those periods. And when you do take advantage of that, you're going to join us in our journey toward food freedom. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give us a like, leave us a comment. Don't forget to share and subscribe. And remember, when you're with us, you are good to grow.